So yes, my name is Robert Schramm. Over the last 8 to 10 years, I've been developing approaches to earning instructional control that would allow me to use less of the traditional escape extinction procedures that Megan was just speaking about. I had my own experiences. I can think of one child in particular who was able to maneuver his way around anything that we tried to develop to get him to participate. And at one point I just got fed up and I just started hand over hand prompting him, and I said, I'm going to prove to you that you're going to be able to do this, and then when you do, my reinforcers are going to win you over. And you know, it didn't work. And I felt horrible doing it. And the parents looked at me strange, the child looked at me strange for visits. I felt guilty going back to that family's home for the next month or two because of this experience. I called some behavior analysts that I respected, and I said, look, I've been trying everything I can think of, and he's not responding to anything. And any type of escape extinction I'm using, I even went to the point where I just started physically prompting him, what do I do? And the advice I got, which is good advice, and I even have it in my book that I got this advice, was to do more pairing. Which, yes, we know that, that's good, it's important. The more pairing we do, the better, but there are always going to be children that you cannot pair your way to compliance with. It's just not going to work with some children. And so we started focusing in on how do we get instructional control with some of these more difficult kids without resorting to this type of a manhandle type of behavior. And so I came up with these 7 steps, and for the last 8 years or so I've been presenting on them, sometimes with Megan, sometimes along either ABA. We presented here once in 2012, I think, as well. And so more recently I'm becoming known as the 7 Steps guy. If anybody saw the behavior guys, their speech yesterday, he was talking about brand naming yourself, and everybody should, don't be afraid to brand yourself. So I put this in there today just because of his speech. I might as well embrace it, right? So we're talking about instructional control, and that's the likelihood that a child will follow an instruction or choose a desired behavior. And how is it best developed in an ABA program? Well, considering Skinner's analysis of verbal behavior and Jack Michael's motivating operations, I believe has revolutionized the ABA community's ability to work with these unmotivated learners. Many VB programs, compliance is gained through pairing efforts with the teacher and the teaching setting with strong reinforcement, fading in of simple instructions that involve MOs in the ongoing teaching process. Much of this was highly publicized by some of my favorite behavior analysts, Dr. Vince Carbone, Mark Sundberg, Patrick McGreevy, and others. And these are the people, along with someone we have here, Cherish and Holly at the time were working with Mr. Carbone, Dr. Carbone, and they were showing me some of these things. And I learned the value of creating an oasis of a teaching setting. I wanted my teaching setting to be as fun as possible, so that the child saw me, saw the teaching materials, grabbed the teaching materials, ran to me and said, let's do it. How do we do this? And so I would be working hard to pair myself and to engage, and I found that whenever I had to resort with escape extinction, traditional escape extinction, I lost all of that. It just went away. I lost the interest of the child, I lost the ability to work with motivated learning. So, observationally, in clinical practice, the use of traditional escape extinction is still very common when these other attempts to increase the value of the teaching setting fail. So, for the last 10 years, I've been working to find this, and let me give you a little bit of history. What I eventually developed was the 7 Steps to Earning Instructional Control. I have them detailed in a couple of different books. If you just Google my name, you can find some of that. I have some papers on it, too, that you can find online that are free. But just a little bit of background. I run an institute. It's not really an institute. It's a consulting service in Germany. We have over 350 children that we're working with. And what I can tell you is that well over 90% of the kids that we work with, we use no traditional escape extinction procedures. So we're able to gain and develop and maintain instructional control with these children without the use of basic escape extinction procedures. And by those procedures, what I'm talking about are blocking a child's attempt to escape the task, forced physical prompting to complete the task, or paced prompting, repeated instructions in a nagging type of fashion to try to get the child to respond. Does anybody think of anything that, other than these 3 things, that you use as escape extinction? I've been doing this talk quite a bit in a lot of places with BCBAs, and this is pretty much it. This is what escape extinction is. And if you think about it, only forced physical prompting is truly escape extinction, because everything else, the kids can still delay as long as they want. So you're not really extinguishing the escape. What you're doing is you're adding an aversive, you, to the escape condition. So I said, well, why do we have to be the aversive in the escape condition? Why do we want to be the aversive ever for our child? So if the child's going to try to escape, let's allow the escape and find a way to make sure that we're not the aversive that brings them back to teaching. So instead of the negative reinforcement that we're using there, we're going to use some alternative behaviors. Now, the value of escape extinction, like Megan said, is not in question. There's problems, which she's already talked about, so I'm going to skip through a couple of these slides to have more time. But the inability, for me, a lot of our people say, I can't even use escape extinction in a school setting. The principal won't let us, the teacher won't let us, so I can't use it, so what do I do? Well, you know, we've got some options here now. And so the 7 steps extend the use of motivating operations in the developing of instructional control. Instead of traditional escape extinction, we're using a motivating operation to increase the value of teaching, but we're using a CEO reflexive in the escape condition. We're actually creating a CEO reflexive in the escape condition that causes the child to choose to come back to learning. So not only are we talking about a CEO reflexive as we're the aversive, the child runs away from us, but can we create an aversive away from us that causes the child to run to us? And that's what we're doing with the 7 steps. As students are allowed to experience the difference between motivated teaching setting and the escape condition that is void of reinforcement, students begin to escape less and less, cooperate more, leading to an increased motivation, participation, and I would argue, better learning rates. So how is this done? Alternative procedures. First, we have to have the alternative to escape blocking. Escape blocking in a lot of your cases may be standing over the child and not letting him leave the table setting, kind of blocking him. You don't really want to grab him and hold him, so you're just kind of shielding him and not letting him get over to where the toys are. So in addition, an alternative to escape blocking, we identify all forms of potential reinforcement in the environment prior to teaching. We keep them under the interventionist control. So we do some cleanup. We make sure that access to other things are only available through us. So we clean up the room a little bit. We sanitize the environment. We make sure that the reinforcers are available, but they have to be given through us. Sometimes that means putting things up on shelves and boxes, whatever it takes, locking doors. And then we allow escape from demands. It's permitted. But during that period of time, we create a void of reinforcement. Steve was having a talk yesterday where he was talking about waiting out, a wait out procedure. And really that's what we do, is we allow the child to see the value of what we're offering, and we set ourselves up as such a highly reinforcing setting that when the child says, oh, I don't want to do this, or I'm not going to try my best, we said, okay, well go ahead, we'll wait you out, go somewhere else, do something else, do whatever you want, but you're not going to get access to any of this. So the child's like, yeah, I escaped. Okay, now what do I want to do? What did I escape to? Well, all my toys are up over there, all my things are over there, that guy was just tickling me and giving me candy and playing with me, so I'm going to try to behave in a way to get that back. So once the child starts behaving in a way to get that back, now we're in a motivated learning position. Now we're in a situation where we can start to affect their behavior again. The alternative to forced physical prompting. Even when using escape blocking to keep a child from teaching the setting, it's not always easy to get them to perform it without forced physical prompting. So instead of obtaining the behavior with forced hand-over-hand prompting and expecting that the reinforcement to follow will allow the fading of that, we have been putting every behavior the child engages in, other than the behavior of interest, on extinction. So once the child walks away from our teaching setting, or once the child refuses to participate or hits somebody in the teaching setting, we shut down reinforcement for anything that they do. They are in a condition of extinction for as long as it takes until they come back and they either follow that instruction or follow an instruction to make up for whatever the behavior was. If they hit their sister and we want them to say they're sorry, maybe that's your choice in your program, then until they say they're sorry, everything they do is going to be on extinction. Every behavior is extinguished. There's no access to any form of reinforcement for as long as it takes for them to come back and make that decision. We will prompt, we will offer supportive prompts. If a child is not able to do something, of course we're going to help them. This isn't about whether or not they know to have the SD. If the SD is effective, but if we start to prompt them and they fight it, we're not going to force that prompt and then throw a reinforcer at them and see, haha, we did it, we got you. Generally that causes them to pull away even more. Then we also have this concept of paced prompting, or nagging procedure, as some people have called it, where you give the SD over and over and over in a nagging way so that the child decides, oh, I'll just do it to get you out of my face. Well, again, the negative reinforcement, we choose not to use that. In fact, I find this to be counterproductive for a lot of kids. Any child who has an attention condition or attention desire within their escape, who's attention motivated as well as escape motivated, you're throwing tons of attention at them at a time when they're inappropriately behaving. So why are you following escape with more attention? Why don't you want to do that? What we do in our program instead is we may give the instruction once, maybe a second time, but once we know that the instruction's been heard, the child is aware of what we're trying to do, we've entered their senses with our instruction, we pull back and we don't give that instruction. We don't give eye contact. We don't engage with them in any way until they've come to us and demonstrated some kind of a motivation. I want to play with that, I want to do that, I want something from you, what can I have? Because that's when I'm likely to get a response that I can follow. Why do you want to spend minute after minute giving them instructions over and over again that you know they're not going to follow? They're not going to follow 90% of the instructions. The whole idea of this is instructional control. I want instructional control. I want the child to follow every instruction. So why give instructions I know they're likely to not follow? So I'm going to wait until I've got a strong motivation where the child comes to me and goes, I want that. Okay, now I'll repeat my instruction. Okay, touch your nose. Or whatever the instruction might be. Because that's the time I'm likely to get it. So those are our basic alternate procedures. And these things are available to all of us. And I don't think there's anything in there that's not principally valid, except for potentially the idea of waiting them out. And that's something that we have to talk about and we have to do more research with. But I will show you a little bit of that research that has been done, and I know Steve is doing some more, and there's others available. So right now I want to show you a video. This is a little boy named Colin, 3 years old, 2 years, refused to drink anything but chocolate milk. So we met this family. He's a 3-year-old, we're working with him, everything's going great. He's loving our reinforcers, he's following instructions, doing everything we've asked, and he just works really hard for the reinforcers. And then we go on break, we come back, and Mom says, I'll tell you what, you want to convince me that this is something that we should be doing? Get him to take a drink of water. I'm like, what do you mean? So he won't drink anything but chocolate milk. We've had people come in and tell us it's a sensory issue, he needs the thickness and this, and I go, well, does he drink regular milk? And they're like, no. Well, then it's not a thickness issue, it's not a sensory issue. It's obviously, even if it is a sensory issue, it's a sensory preference, which we're not going to be reinforcing. So I said, well, normally we don't work on food and drink things right away, but the mom challenged me. I like a challenge. And he had been responding really well to us, so I felt like we could do it successfully. So we successfully identified ourselves and paired ourselves. We'd done a give back program and a waiting program to very good success earlier that day. And so we decided that we would reduce his escape from this drinking water. Let me show you this video. I'm going to let it run and let you just get a feel for what this looks like. But this is the process of doing the 7 steps. When we give an instruction and the child refuses, you're going to see the opposite of what you normally see. Normally you would hold the child in, you would repeat your instruction over and over. We're going to do the opposite. And I want you to see how it results. If you can't read that, you can tell what they're saying. He's saying, I want one and that and that. And she's saying, first put them together. Now there's the SD, have a drink of water. And she says, okay, no problem, I'll just start cleaning up the toys. She's not holding him, he's grabbing her. Now she's telling him, just sit down, we'll work it out. I don't want her to do that. To me, that's a teaching mistake. I wouldn't be interacting with him at all right now. Because all that does is it leads us to this. You tell him to sit, so now he knocks down the chair. So now we're battling over the chair instead of the water. So she does the smart thing here, and this is my wife, by the way, Nadine. And she just says, okay, fine, leave the chair down, that don't matter. Okay. Do you want to play some more? Alright, well if you want to play some more, here you go. He tries to attend us to other reinforcers. I'll take you up. And the perfect response is, okay, fine, I'll put it away then. So his sit showed us that he was getting closer to participating, so we brought the items back out. His throw made us pull him back again. Cars in the front and off the track, we do that. So all this time, he's not getting what he wants, which is access to the toy. So he is in a period of extinction. She's allowing him to get back to where they were when they gave the first instruction. That's not necessarily important, but she does do that. Now she's going to repeat the instruction because she's got behavioral momentum. She thinks he's in a good position to maybe answer it, so she'll give the instruction again. She's actually going to wait until he asks for something because that's the best teaching time. You didn't think it would be that easy, did you? Now we call this extinction burst behavior because he's in extinction and his behavior is escalating to try to get what he wants. But we don't respond to it. We don't go to him. We don't move to him. We don't try to give him any attention. We do the opposite. We stay with the toys and we play and we talk about his games. He's like, where's mom? She always comes when I do this. So Nadine, she keeps her back to him just to make sure that he doesn't feel like we're waiting on him. She takes all the attention she could possibly take away from him. And he has access to no toys because we've sanitized the environment. The closer he comes to us and the louder he gets, the better we know we're winning. The better we know this is working. If we're going to him, it's not working. He comes over, but instead of going to the teachers who have all the good stuff, he goes to mom, because mom always gives in, right? He just asked, do I blow my nose? Which is something he's never said before. But something she always does for him after he has a tantrum and she says everything's okay. So he's trying to get to the end of it. But he didn't really want to blow his nose. He wants the toys. We know that. We're winning when we control the reinforcers. He's still not ready yet. It's okay. Now, we could have forced him to take a drink at any point in time. And where do you think we would have been 3 weeks from now, forcing him to take a drink? Maybe we get lucky and the reinforcement works eventually. Maybe not. But now he's got a choice. Do I participate in your learning fun? And we applaud, and we give reinforcement, and we tickle, and we hug. And we make this experience as positive as possible. That whole thing took about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But that's not the thing I want to show you. I want to show you what happens next. We're not just going to walk away from it and say, whoo, we got through that, we're done. We've got to use what we just got there. We got him to decide it was in his best interest to drink. She's waiting for him to show an interest in something. That's the difference when you do it this way. You get that right away. Not always. Sometimes they fight you for a day or two. But when a child is making the active decision to participate, once they see that extinction coming, there's no reason not to participate again because they know we're going to decide to eventually. We transferred it to another item that that was aversive for him, the food. Now watch what she does. She's going to go right ahead and try to get a variable ratio here. She's going to extend the variable ratio. She's checking to make sure he's actually drinking. Oh, let's get 2 drinks for 1 reinforcer. So that that is the process. That is the alternate procedures that we use. Now, what we're doing is a larger thing than just waiting it out. We're not just waiting him out. If you just wait him out, the child goes off, finds something else to do, plays another game, it's not going to work. But we have to do a combination of things. How much time do I have?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, perfect. So we have to do a combination of things. And this combination of things that we've developed I've really been able to boil it down to these 7 things. And what's great about the 7 steps is it doesn't matter what family I go into. If my consultant that's working for me has been working with the family for a few months, and I come in and there's a problem with instructional control, I can identify which of the 7 things they are not doing as the cause for why they're not finding better instructional control. Oh, it's obvious you're not following step number 3. Oh, your step number 2 needs to be must improved. Step 7 is not working at all because he's finding reinforcement during the extinction period. You've got to block him doing this because that's reinforcement. So he can't get away with doing that throughout the entire time. Now some kids, they do this only to get you to leave them alone, or they do this and then they make you think that they're happy. But if you still withhold your reinforcement, after about 10, 15 minutes, all of a sudden they're like, okay, well that got boring, now what? And they come back to you. If that's the case, you don't even need to block them. But if you get a kid who's going to do this, and he's going to literally do this for 8 hours straight, then you need to go and block that because you can't allow reinforcement during step 7. But let's talk about the individual steps since I have a few minutes. 1. Now these are written for parents and teachers. They're not necessarily written for behavior analysts, but I've got the principle underneath them for you guys. Show your child that you're the one in control of the things he wants to hold or play with, and that you will decide if and for how long he can have them. That's what we teach our families. That's what we teach our teachers, our parents. Basically what we're dealing with is a comprehensive control of all reinforcing items prior to teaching that allows you to be the giver in all situations and never have to be the taker. Okay? 2, show your child that you are fun. Make every interaction you have as enjoyable an experience as possible so that they will want to follow your directions to earn more time sharing these experiences with you. What we're dealing with here is comprehensive pairing of your teaching setting and yourself as a reinforcer. You want to have everything that you do about your teaching setting to be the oasis. But what does an oasis need to be an oasis? It needs a desert. There's no such thing as an oasis without a desert. And that's what I'm bringing is I'm saying we need to have the desert. So think about that. If you're having trouble, why hold a child into your prison of teaching and expect them to want to be there? Let them go. Let them figure out how to break back into your oasis. Let them be out there going, this is no fun, this is no fun. How do I get back in? Nobody breaks into prison. Okay, there's no reason to break into prison. But they will break into an oasis if they're out in the desert, I promise you that. They'll find a way to get in. Step number 3, show your child that you can be trusted. Say what you mean what you say. If you instruct your child to do something, do not allow access to reinforcement until or unless he has complied with your request. This step allows for prompting to completion if necessary. Again, you prompt. You just don't force physically prompt. This is carefully selecting your SDs in all situations and following through with appropriate consequences is the key to earning trust and ultimately instructional control. I'll wait till your cameras come down before I switch to the next slide. Step number 4. By the way, you guys can email me. I'll have my email in the end, and I will send you this PowerPoint. And I will also send you to any place where I have the things online. Number 4, show your child that following your directions is beneficial and the best way to obtain what he wants. Give your child easy directions as often as possible and reinforce these decisions to participate by following good experiences. What we're talking about here is just your basic VB stuff. Fade in your instructions with continuous schedule of positive reinforcement. Make sure that you're just kind of going from full parity to fading these simple instructions in. Get them used to responding to things that are easy before you start giving them hard work. Avoid the use of negative reinforcement wherever possible. Step number 5, provide consistent reinforcement in the early stages, and then over time you get to start pulling back a little bit and doing an ever-increasing variable ratio of enforcement. I guess it's not ever-increasing because at some point you have to stop increasing it. You have to start changing the reinforcer. But that's what you do. You start with consistent reinforcement and you pull back. I know most of you guys know this, right? This is how we work. But think about when you're teaching a parent or a teacher or a behavioral assistant how to work with the child. What a great system to be able to say, here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, step 7. Do these 7 things every time you're with that child. Follow their lead and do these 7 things. And you will know what to do. And this is one of those steps. If they're doing this, you should see an increase in responding with less and less reinforcement needed. Step number 6, demonstrate that you know your child's priorities as well as your own. We use with differentiated reinforcement. We're not talking about DFR or DFO or DFA. We're talking about different levels of reinforcement. I know there's not a lot of research It still feels right to me, and I don't have the research that says the more reinforcement you give, the better the responding will be. There has been some stuff about like babies in a crib who, when they kick the mobile, if they just barely touch it, the mobile doesn't move very much. But if they touch it really well, it moves a lot and longer. So they tend to develop the skill that moves the mobile longer. I personally believe through stuff like that, the better the reinforcer you get in a moment, you're more likely to choose that behavior than you would if you only get something that's kind of reinforcing. I know there's a lot of people in the science who would say that's poppycock. Reinforcement is either reinforcement or it isn't. But we still use it because I have no one to prove to me that it's not working, it's not helping, so I still use it. But also you have to know your own priorities in your teaching. So not only what the child wants, we have to know what your goals are too. Because a lot of times one interaction could be both positive and negative, and you have to know, do I reinforce it or not? If a child says cookie when you hold a cookie up, but then he grabs it from you, do you let him have the cookie, yes or no? I don't know, has he ever said cookie before? Is cookie the major concern in his program? If so, then you give him that cookie and 3 more. But if he grabs that cookie and grabbing has become a major impediment to his learning and he can't say cookie, then obviously you're not going to reinforce that. You're going to pull it back, you're going to get a better response. Am I talking too fast? No. I'm trying to do a 3-hour workshop in 25 minutes. Step number 7. Show your child that ignoring your instructions or choosing inappropriate behavior will not result in the acquisition of reinforcement. Steps 1 through 6 are all about the antecedents, presenting your teaching environment in a way that the child will want to participate. But guess what? Sometimes they're not going to. Sometimes they're going to pull back, sometimes they're going to fight you. And when that happens, boom, you're in step 7. Step 7 says, do not allow inappropriate behavior or ignoring instructions to be followed by reinforcement. That's all the step says. There's a lot involved in doing that. It allows for extinction of all behavior in the escape condition other than the behavior of interest without restricting movement away from the teaching setting. The reason I let the kids leave the teaching setting is I want it to be the oasis they choose to come back to. I want it to be the reinforcer. So I let them leave. I'm not holding you here. You want to escape prison? Go ahead, escape prison. It's not prison. It's an oasis, and they'll realize that quickly. We will use punishment. In addition to the extinction of all other behaviors, we will use punishment, preferably negative punishment, in that we will remove access to reinforcers during that time. My wife did it with Colin. He had the toy in his hand, and she asked him to take a bite of the food. He didn't take the bite. He said no, so she took the toy out of his hand. Negative punishment. So we do use that in that as well. I call it mini consequences because we try to do it with the child. As they start to misbehave, we start to pull the teaching materials and the reinforcers away. Remember, our teaching setting is a reinforcer, so we pick up our teaching materials and they go, oh, something bad's happening. And we try to use this to create mini consequences. Is that CEO or CMO reflexive I was talking about? We create a signal in the environment, like the child starts to misbehave and you go, uh-oh, and the child goes, oh, wait a second. What happened? Well, that's a signal that a worsening set of conditions is about to occur. We're going to start taking the reinforcers away, the teaching materials away, the attention away. Things are going to get worse. That causes them to then reverse their behavior and try to give you what we want. Representative data. This is kind of what it looks like. Megan, back when she was a Delion, she took some data on a child with us, and this is very representative to the kind of thing that we see. You've got inappropriate behavior. You've got instructions followed. So these are the number of instructions given. This is their baseline. This is the kind of inappropriate behavior seen. We started here to do the 7 steps. I wasn't here. She started doing the 7 steps, the people she was training. And immediately the behavior went up. Just like the boy ran in the other room, he flipped on the floor, he did everything. His behavior went up through the roof. That's the extinction burst. Okay? As long as we maintain, though, that behavior very quickly starts to come back down. And look at the flip-flop. Suddenly, we're getting very little behavior issues and much more instructions given and followed. This was really cool. She did an integrity checklist with one of her students that she was doing this on, and she wanted to find out, are the teachers following the 7 steps? So can we say that this is working or not working? Are we really doing the 7 steps? So she did an integrity checklist, and look what we ended up getting. This to me is the coolest thing in the world. We ended up with an accidental reversal design. Because what was happening here, this is the non-compliant behavior in baseline. This is the teacher following the 7 steps. The teachers were not following the 7 steps in baseline because they hadn't been taught it yet. And the kids' behavior was bad. Then we teach them the 7 steps. And so suddenly we get a flip-flop. Now all of a sudden the teachers are performing the 7 steps correctly, and the the integrity is getting better, and the behavior is going down. But there's still a lot of variance here, isn't there? You see that variance? to me, that doesn't look good, and I'm not really excited to see that. But then we started to notice, wait a second, when the integrity is good, when they're really following the 7 steps, the behavior after the initial one dropped low. Then all of a sudden they slipped, creating procedural drift. They stopped doing the 7 steps correctly. And what happened? The behavior increased again. Then we got back, we retrained them, and we said, no, make sure you're doing it correctly. They started doing it correctly, and the behavior dropped back down again. And again it happened. And it was almost 1 for 1. If we did the 7 steps, the behaviors went down. They disappeared. The instructional control improved. If we didn't do it, then they went back up again.
And note that they only missed 1 step. When it jumped up, they were only just not doing one of the steps, and it still jumped up. So you have to do both.
And that is true. If you miss any one of the 7 steps, if you are not saying what you mean, meaning what you say, or if you are not following through with extinction appropriately, or if you're not pairing your teaching setting appropriately, any 1 step can throw the whole thing off. So there's potential benefits associated with this. We kind of talked about these before. Are we running out of time? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to skip through the I want to show you this one little 1-minute video. This is really the coolest thing of all. When you do this appropriately, this is what will happen when you do this well. This is a boy I was working with. I was giving him instructions. So I'm just doing a little bit of pairing with him. I'm playing with him. I'm giving him access. I ask for the toy back. I make it as fun as I can. I give an instruction. He follows my echoic instruction. He gets the toy back. So now I ask for the toy back. First I give him additional reinforcement because he's been doing so good. Now I ask for the ball back and he doesn't give it to me. He doesn't give me my toy back. So what do I do? What do you do? Start repeating your instruction, maybe grab it from him, maybe force him. I try to reach for it, I can't get it. So look at what I do next. Okay, well then I guess I'm going to stop teaching you. I pick up my teaching materials. I start to walk away, and he's like, oh, I sense the desert coming. That's a CEO reflexive. I'm going to give it back to you. When you use the 7 steps comprehensively and well, what you will find, if you are able to do it correctly and get a good get a good program around the child, you will find that the opportunity of losing your teaching becomes aversive to them. You become the reinforcer. As soon as I threaten to get up and walk away, he returns the ball back to me. I'm telling you he's got to do it faster next time, and then we get back to teaching. Okay, yeah, I know we're not really supposed to be selling anything, but this is what the book looks like. That's what the book looks like, and